Welcome to our new series about Fort Donelson National Battlefield located in Dover, Tennessee. The preservation of the artifacts found inside of the park began the moment the battle occurred in February 1862. The park itself was established in 1928. Today, we will be looking at the area around the outside and inside of the Interim Visitor Center. The Visitor Center itself is undergoing current refurbishment and is under construction. However, we did get to view many of the wonderful things that were saved inside of their temporary housing. All information read is from the signage inside of the National Park. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us to Fort Donelson National Battlefield. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger time machine to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. We are at Fort Donelson National Battlefield, Visitor Center and Exhibits, open daily 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we are going to be correct and walk along the paths.
This is one of the many cannon that they have set up on display here at Fort Donelson, Tennessee, which again is at the land between the lakes, Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley. The name of the place is Fort Donelson National Battlefield. And they've got cannons all over the place here. And I know a lot of these cannons were actually abandoned on the battlefield, and they were later recovered. You also got to remember that at the time, it was legal to have a cannon. As a matter of fact, I think it's still legal to have a cannon. Just got to go through some paperwork for it. We're at Fort Donelson, Tennessee National Battlefield, and there is the sign for the United States. There's a sign for the Confederacy. Different types of cannon. U.S. flag. It's a shame they're not flying the CSA flag, and I don't mean the stars and bars, I mean the first national flag. Flies every day over Texas and Six Flags parks. Says CSA, Confederate States of America, Fort Donelson, constructed under the supervision of Lieutenant Colonel Jeremy F. Gilmer, Confederate States Army Chief Engineer, Western Department, Fort Donelson was defended by a force of about 14,000 men under command of Brigadier General John B. Floyd and Gideon J. Pillow. Command of the right wing extended from Hickman Creek on the north to Indian Creek was assigned to Brigadier General Simon B. Buckner. Brigadier General Bushrod R. Johnson commanded the left wing east of Indian Creek. Although successful in repelling an attack upon Hyman's brigade on February 13th and equally successful in an artillery duel with Commodore Foote's gunboats on February 14th. The garrison of Fort Donelson was nevertheless in a difficult position owing to the close investment effected by Federal Army and the resulting severance of its land communications with Nashville. On the night of February 14, 1862, a council of general officers and regimental commanders decided to attack the Federal right flank, force a passage through the line of investment, and effect a retreat to Nashville by way of Charlotte, Tennessee. General Pillow was to direct the movements against the Federal right, General Buckner that against the right center, and if successful, to occupy a position to cover the retreat of the whole army. Although successful in the execution of this operation, the turn of events in the afternoon of February 15th placed the Confederates garrison in a precarious battle. They suffered from the intensity of cold and the lack of food. Their ammunition supply was nearly exhausted. Federal troops were once more in possession of the ground they had lost during the forenoon. Part of the trenches on the Confederate right was securely in Federal lands, with prospect of another day's battle unpromising. The possibility of effecting a retreat doubtful. Surrender remained the only course of action open to the Confederate commanders. In this gloomy situation, General Floyd relinquished command, and with a portion of the garrison crossed the river on 2 boats, which had arrived a little before daylight. General Pillow declined the command and likewise escaped across the river. Finally, Colonel Forrest and most of his cavalry left the fort by the river road just before Federal troops closed this last gap. General Buckner, upon whom devolved the responsibility of command, communicated with General Grant and requested an armistice. At daylight on February 16th, the gallant defenders of Fort Donelson, reduced to less than 9,000 men, laid down their arms and capitulated. United States of America, General Ulysses S. Grant's Army, 1st Division, Brigadier General John A. McClernand, 2nd Division, Brigadier General Charles F. Smith, 3rd Division, Brigadier General Lew Wallace. The military authorities of the Confederate States erected Fort Henry and Donelson to deny the use of the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers to Federal forces, and to protect the bridges where the railroad connecting Bowling Green and Columbus, Kentucky crossed these water gateways to Confederate territory. The capture of these forts by Federal troops and the destruction of the bridges would sever communication between General Albert Sidney Johnston's army at Bowling Green and the troops under Major General Leonidas Polk at Columbus, hence the importance of the campaign. Fort Henry capitulated on February 6, 1862. On February 12th, General Grant's army of 15,000 men, divided into 2 divisions, left Fort Henry and marched on Fort Donelson. By noon, the heads of the columns arrived within 2 miles of the fort, encountered and drove in Confederate pickets, and gradually completed the investment of the fort with occasional skirmishing along the line. 6 additional regiments under Colonel John Mather proceeded to the vicinity of Fort Donelson by water under convoy of Commodore A.H. Foote's gunboats. These troops, with another contingent brought over from Fort Henry by Brigadier General Lew Wallace, formed a 3rd Division. On the following days, the Federal Army extended the investment of Fort Donelson. Morrison's attack on Maney's battery on the 13th and the attack of the river gunboats on the 14th were the principal events. On February 15th, the Confederate Army under Generals Pillow and Buckner made a sortie from the fort, attacked the Federal right flank, and gradually forced it back along Wynn's Ferry Road. General Wallace's division stopped the Confederate advance. General Grant ordered an immediate counteroffensive. By dark, General Smith's division had firm position of the entire extreme right of the Confederate rifle pits, while on the Confederate left, Federal troops reoccupied the positions lost in the forenoon. Unconditional surrender of the garrison at daylight, February 16, 1862, brought Fort Donelson campaign to a conclusion. but few of the federal troops had ever been under fire before, exposed to driving snowstorms and severe cold for 3 days and nights, most of the time under galling fire. The troops fought with conspicuous gallantry and rugged determination. The victorious Federal Army entered Dover, and the Fort Taylor's battery fired a national salute as the colors of the Union were raised within the entrenchments. Again, we're at Fort Donelson, Tennessee, National Park, National Battlefield. Here is a cannon and its support wagon. That's what they kept the packing and the gunpowder and stuff in while they were transporting the cannon. The cannon would hook to that, and the horses would hook to this bar, and that's the way it would be transported. I can't remember the name of it, it's like Caperson or something like that, but like when you see a national funeral, such as a president or whatever, the coffin is actually mounted on a big thing like this. That box also doubled as a seat for the person who drove the wagon. This is the gate here at Fort Donelson. You see the cannonballs stacked on top of the gate posts. There's several stacks of cannonballs down through there. And there's an interesting story about those cannonballs. The plate that they were stacked on like that was called a brass monkey because it was made out of brass. Cannonballs are made out of iron. And what would happen if it was extremely cold, the brass shrunk faster than the iron done, and so it would cause the cannonballs to pop off of the brass monkey. And if you've ever wondered, that's where that old saying goes about cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey. Now, according to the sign here, this is a 6-pounder gun painted green. I've seen several of these guns so far that are painted green, and I'm going to guess all of them are 6-pounders. But it says the 6-pounder was the prime artillery piece of the Mexican War and the smallest regulation gun of the Civil War. The Confederacy and the Union armies in the West used it extensively, but it was replaced in the Union armies in the East by the Napoleon and the rifle gun. Its normal range was 1,500 yards. It fired fixed ammunition, either solid shot, spherical case, or canister. Sign says Confederate States of America, Brigadier General Simon B. Buckner's Division, Colonel John C. Brown's Brigade, and Porter's Battery. This battery of 6 guns occupied the salient, sweeping all approaches to the front and flanking the trenches to the right and left. On February 13, 1862, the battery assisted in the repulse of an attack made by a portion of General Smith's division against the right of the entrenchments. Later in the day, it assisted Graves' battery in silencing McAllister's battery, which had occupied a position on the opposite hill. On February 15th, a section of the battery moved to the left of the Confederate line, and there severed the guns of Green's battery, assisting in the attack upon the Federal line. Late in the afternoon, after Federal troops had occupied the rifle pits on the extreme right, this battery assisted in preventing a further advance by the Federals. In this last action, the battery commander, Captain Thomas K. Porter, was seriously wounded. According to the sign I read on the other side, these guns occupy the position that they did during the Civil War in this general area. And I'm going to guess that these pickets, these trenches, were probably dug at this time of the Civil War. Trenches like this can be found on Jenkins Mountain there in Jenkins, Kentucky. And I've actually requested several times from the National Park Service to recognize that as a battlefield there on Pound Mountain. It is in the Jefferson National Forest, so it will be very easy for them to declare it a national battlefield. I really wish they would.
The next few minutes are photographs taken of the area surrounding the Interim Visitor Center. This portion of the video is silent. Thank you. We at Kentucky, Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our visit to Fort Donelson. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky, Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Civil War history.